Okay, time to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Huber,
Here.
Loest, Kettering,
Here.
Hummel,
Here.
O'Hara,
Here.
Welsh, here, Kneifel.
Here. Okay, we've had a lot of chance to review the meetings from last month's meeting. We have a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Give it to Nick and O'Hara, I guess. That's fine. Do we have any items to be added to tonight's agenda?
Need to take a vote on that.
Oh, sorry. I forgot about that part. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, seeing none. Do we have items to be added to tonight's agenda?
We have two to be removed, the two Zimmerman plats.
Okay. I have a item to add. At 7:15, I call Tyler Larson up to speak about the petition involving data centers. Any other additions or eliminations? Okay. I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda without the Zimmerman plats and with adding Tyler Larson to the 7:15 slot. Anybody wants a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, seeing none, agenda is moved. Okay. We'll do conflict of interest. I'll start with you, Don.
I was reading, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Oh, we got a commissioner coming, so we'll wait a sec.
That's okay.
I've been there. You want to take call again, or do you have to?
I don't have to.
Okay. So we're gonna do conflict of interest.
None.
I have none.
Welsh, none.
Hummel, none.
O'Hara, none.
I'm gonna abstain from the Dumont plat.
That being said, we can start.
We have to wait 2 minutes.
Oh, can we move a plat up?
I don't think, by the time I pull it up,
Oh, come on. Expect you to be ready for this.
I'm ready, but
That's fine.
I'd rather not rush it.
No.
I'd rather take our time
That's
and do it right.
Good, really good. If the heat would just go away, I'd be perfect. I moved back from Wichita because of this. It was like this every day. It was awful.
Seeing that it's 7:05, we'll start with the Brandt conditional use permit.
Applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for an addition to an accessory structure since he is over the 2,400 square foot maximum in moderate density residential district per Article 7, Section 707, Article 18, Section 1805, and Article 19, Section 1905. Said property is legally described as Planks Addition, is platted in Book S7, page 77B, and the west 538.3 feet of the south 370.28 feet, of the north 489.28 feet, of the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter lying adjacent to said Planks addition. In section 4, township 93 north, range 56 west of the 5th PM, and lots 15, 16, and 17 located in the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter. In section 4, township 93 north, range 56 west of the 5th PM, as platted in book S4, page 109B, all in Yankton County, South Dakota. E911 address is 2605 Deer Boulevard, Yankton. If you look at the map on Beacon, you can see where my cursor is. So these folks use this for their business. They're beef honey farmers. They just want to add on a small addition to that building. They're already over the 2,400, but it's been that way for a long time. And I think it was, if I'm right, they just wanted to add on where the concrete is already extended pretty much. Yeah. So it's just a small addition.
So the building is currently 1,900 square feet, is that correct? And
Yeah.
They would be adding 500.
Is it even
Roughly.
500? Yeah, roughly.
And the lot of land itself is a little over 11 acres, is that not correct?
11.16.
And it's in an R2 zone,
Yes,
which the minimum lot size in an R2 zone is 40,000 square feet.
correct.
So it's sort of an outlier in an R2 zone, isn't
Yep.
it?
Well, we've got some other ones, but again, a lot of these buildings were built pre-ordinance. So. Like I said, it's for their business, their livelihood, so.
Okay. So the applicant is here, so if it pleases the commission, we can ask them if they want to add anything. Grants, you good? Okay. Do we have anyone from the public to talk on behalf of this conditional use permit? See no public comment. Commission, do we want to do some discussion and then go over the findings of fact? Good. Do we have any discussion? Paul? This seems pretty straightforward. So going over the findings of fact, are the requirements of section 1723 met? Yes, they are. Requirements of section 1729 met. All the fees paid at the time of application? Yes, they are. Did they specifically cite an application of which section of the ordinance the conditional use is sought? They did, because of the 2,400 square foot maximum and moderate density. Was a notice of public hearing given? It was mailed and published. Okay. Tablet just went crazy. We have a public hearing tonight, so our planning commission can make a recommendation to include granting of the conditional use, granting with conditions, or denial. We must make written findings certifying that it's in compliance with specific rules. Their ingress and egress won't change. They'll use that main driveway as they've used. Off right-of-way parking and loading is not of concern. Refuse and service is not of concern. Utilities, it's attached to a building that already has it and it's compatible with. Screening and buffering, right now that site is open to the public view, so extending it won't. And they do plant like sunflowers and other things in that front corner, so it does buffer. They're not adding any signage, required yards or other open space, and then general compatibility. There's other properties on that stretch who have accessory structures, so. In the findings of fact, I see nothing wrong with it. So if it pleases the commission, someone make a motion.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call.
Huber,
Yes.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Kneifel.
Yes.
You guys are good if you don't want to stay for the rest of the party. All right. Thanks, guys.
We have the first of three Kubel plats. Plat of Tract 1 of Archie's Addition located in the southeast quarter of Section 8, Township 94 North, Range 57 west of the 5th PM, Yankton County, South Dakota. This is what the plat looks like, what they're platting off. And you can see it follows that line that separates the two types of growth.
Commission? Any comment? Do we have any public comment on this? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commission, what's your pleasure?
Move approval, Loest.
Second Welch.
Roll call.
Huber,
Yes.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Kneifel.
Yes.
So this is the part that they're parceling off. Again, it matches the separation between the two types of growth there. Meets all requirements.
Yep. Commission, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. This is the pleasure of the commission.
Second, Loest.
Roll call.
Huber,
Yes.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Kneifel. Again, this is what they've platted off. And again, they're just following that change on the map.
Commissioner discussion? And then we'll open to public. No public comment. We'll close. What is your pleasure?
I move to approve O'Hara.
I'll second Huber.
Roll call.
Huber,
Yes.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Kneifel.
Yes.
This one's gonna be a little more interesting.
I was.
This is a conservation easement, so it covers quite a unique piece of ground. This is what it's coming out of. think it's right here.
So it says easement 2. I'm assuming there's an easement 1 somewhere.
Previous, wetland or conservation easement.
Yeah, right below it.
Right below it.
If you look at the map, it's right below it, but I don't think it's connect. Maybe it is quote unquote connected, but. Any discussion from the commission? I'll be honest, it's my first conservation easement I think I've done in the time I've been on here, so.
Been a few years since we've had one.
Yeah. We'll open to public first and just see. Seeing no public comment, back to the commission. Does everyone know what a conservation easement is? You want Bill to give us a little of a lay of the land? Or Gary, just so we learn a little bit?
Yeah.
Can you give us the elevator pitch real quick?
Well, it's agreement they make with the state that that ground is going to remain the way it is forever, basically. So they have to go through the state and jump through those hoops and get everything approved there. We're the last step in it.
Then they get a payment.
Get them like CRP, yeah.
Yeah.
Something.
Is there an end date? Are these 99 or
Yeah.
these 99 years?
It says 99, but they're supposed to go beyond that, they
Mm,
renew. The idea is to keep the land untouched.
How many acres was it again?
11.3, 11.4.
Yeah. 7.361.
I think I think it's a good principle for what we're doing. I think it's good to, protect our land. So, I'm definitely in favor of it, but anyone see a pitfall that I'm not seeing?
Nope.
Okay, then what's your guys' pleasure?
I'll move to approve O'Hara.
Second Loest.
Roll call.
Huber,
Yes.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yeah.
Welsh,
Yes.
Kneifel. The last meeting, we approved, on the right side of these lots, we approved 3 lots. They're just adding more to the west.
This is R2, isn't it, Tom?
Yes. Yeah, so right along here, basically.
Do we have an active subdivision plan for them? So in the last few months, we've approved what, this 5 + 5? Is that what we've been doing? Are we gonna be at
There were
6?
3 last
Last.
meeting. What we have here.
Okay.
I'm assuming they're just going to continue as the demand is there.
Yeah. So those that don't know, they're part of the Economic Development Task Force was to review some of our zoning practices and figure out how to use land use controls to make sure that we are developing with grounded growth in mind and not creating further problems, whether that's non-conforming lots or, just areas that just don't fit our lake area community well. And part of our land use controls that we haven't historically used is the subdivision regulations, where they will submit a master plan, and making sure that we are that's kind of our tool to make sure we're looking at the subdivision comprehensively and not just chunking little lots on over and over again and not having them update that so we understand the full vision of that area. It should help us understand is current infrastructure such as whatever one of those roads is named, Beltrain Drive or whatever, Ridge Road, is able to support the future subdivision without needing modification or additional support. So might be a little late for this one, but it's just something to consider when we start seeing these older subdivisions continue to grow. We want to make sure that that master plan is in alignment with how we want to use our land out by the lake and how constituents want that land used ultimately. So just something to have in mind. Any other commissioner discussion? Okay, anybody from the public want to talk about this? I'll stand up at once. Oh, okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Move approval, Loest.
Second.
Roll call.
Huber,
Abstain.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Kneifel.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, we will welcome Tyler Larson to the podium.
Good evening, Tyler Larson, Yankton County State's Attorney. I was asked to come to this meeting tonight to discuss, I'm sure many of you are aware, the petition that was filed to propose a data center ordinance in Yankton County. For those that are aware, that petition was filed with the auditor. The petitioner who filed it, or the person who filed the petition and the supplemental work, based their petition on chapter 7-18A. However, it's my interpretation of statute and my opinion that is not the proper statute to apply to this issue. Chapter 7 deals with ordinances that are legislative acts by the county commission. The proposed ordinance is a land use ordinance governed by planning and zoning, and that's a different chapter, chapter 11. And so the county auditor will have to talk to the petition filer to determine the signatures that were submitted. Chapter 7 has 5% of county voters for the petition signatures, whereas Chapter 11 is 20% of landowners. So if they still have enough petition signatures submitted, that will be referred then to this board for consideration. And so it'd be the same process for any zoning ordinance that you guys see. You have proper publishing and notice requirements you guys have to do, and then you make your recommendation to the commission to adopt or reject that ordinance. So I just want to make it clear, they can still proceed with the petition if it meets the requirements, but it will not go to the general ballot. It comes to you guys to determine if you want to make your recommendations to the county commission. So, any questions?
So just to keep it simple, we feel that they're at the threshold for that 20% of landowners. The auditor will check, obviously, and make sure. And then it'll be referred to us and we can not recommend it. We can recommend as is, or we can modify and make our recommendation from there. But this will not follow the process that the petitioner originally thought, and many of the people in our county thought, where it would hit the petition or the ballot, and then from there it would go into effect. So it will come through us, and that's where we are. Like I said last month, we need to be on this. We need to understand what this is, and that's why we're gonna have an expert speak. But to be clear, it will come to us if it meets the threshold at ideally next month's regular scheduled meeting.
So how do you calculate the number of landowners? And I'm assuming that includes anybody who owns a home,
Yep.
a
So
business.
landowner is defined in statute. So the statutes that govern this ordinance initiated petition are chapters 11-2-28 through 11-28, or excuse me, 11-2-30. And so landowner is defined in 11-2-28 as any person who owns land in the county as evidenced by the records in the office of the Register of Deeds and the Clerk of Courts. If land is sold under a contract for deed that is of record in the office of Register of Deeds in the county, both the landowner and the individual purchaser of the land as named in the contract are treated as landowners. Charitable, benevolent, or religious societies that own any agricultural land are not landowners for this section.
So would an LLC be a landowner or a trust?
I'd have to do some more research on that, Sherry. Statute just says landowner and it explicitly excludes the charitable, benevolent, religious
Okay.
landowners. So I guess it's up for interpretation. I can do some more research on that because it doesn't explicitly say that in the statute. But we can definitely follow up with the auditor and the Register of Deeds on that.
And I wouldn't think that the corporate veil of an LLC would prevent you from, in this particular reason, because in an LLC, they're still named parties. So I would say you're probably
And-
okay.
I find it interesting that for the charitable, benevolent, or religious societies that they explicitly say agricultural land. They don't say any land. So again, that's kind of interesting as well. So the auditor will go through and make sure the petition meets that requirement. If the 20% is made, then they will be referred to you guys.
So,
So I've never been through this before. So if it comes to the planning commission and they reject it, does that mean the petition is done? Or do they have to start over and do something else?
Yeah, so if you keep reading the statute, I guess it's probably heard in under 11-2-29, the planning shall hold at least one public hearing on the change. And it doesn't really address it, but I'm assuming it's the same as any other ordinance proposal. So if you guys reject it right away, don't make a recommendation. Actually, you'll make your recommendation.
The recommendation could be to
Not
reject, not pass.
Yeah.
And then the county still has the say to, just like with every one of our recommendations, they still have the say to say, yep, the P and Z said that, but we disagree and we're gonna move forward with it, but it has to come through here first.
Yep. Ultimately, it's the decision of the Board of Commissioners.
But it'll come through here and live through here for a little while till we make a recommendation.
so how is that different from our discussion last month with this this group developing?
So this allows us to take the work that's been done, have it come to us. We're allowed to have the public comment. We're allowed to go through our process and we're allowed to say, adopt as is. We're able to modify. Or we're able to just say, hey, that's not a good fit. Stick with the 6-month moratorium. We can do better. That could be our recommendation. And then when it hits the county, again, you guys can do what county commission as elected officials can do what you want. But ultimately, this gives us a chance to look it over, hear from some additional resources, compile some additional constituent information, and make sure that what is currently, the framework that's currently provided is a good fit for Yankton County or not. And then we're able to make a recommendation going forward. So.
And
If
there's,
you're gonna develop a new ordinance, if there's a lot of recommendations, or are you gonna develop a new ordinance if there's a lot of recommendations for change?
Does it have a substantial change, anything in there? I mean, that's the fear is if we modify it beyond what is reasonable of the petition, are you actually making a recommendation to deny the petition? Is kind of what I think is what, I mean, if we take it, we gut it and we change it substantially, the recommendation to adopt is no longer to adopt what was sent out as a petition. So I think we're gonna have to be careful to determine what is a substantial change and what is clerical or administrative. And that'll take this group reading what was sent out and what was signed, and then maybe figuring out where we start with it. If we feel like it's, you know, it has the substance to make its way and make a good recommendation, then we can, modify within reason. Or if we feel it's not a good fit, then gives us the chance to recommend not adopting that, but we can replace it with something else.
But we only have 5 months left.
So I think that's my question as well, has the window closed for petitions of this type before the November election?
See, petitions of this type under chapter 11 don't apply to the election.
Any more land use petitions will have to come through us, and they can come through us any time of the year, no matter election cycle or season. Anything else of this nature, if it gets moved to a petition, will have to follow this process where it comes to us and then we move it to the commission. So we could see a petition every month getting that 5 or 20% threshold, and we would read it, review it, and then we would make the recommendation to move forward with it. Now, for the public, we want confidence, we want trust, we want transparency. So that is why Tyler's here tonight. Tyler's already notified the petitioner. They're aware that this is the process for this particular item. And it's our due diligence now to take this and use it and make sure we earn community trust, and we present the commission with something that is good fit for the community as a whole.
So does the statute list any time frame required?
Yes, there's obviously your publishing time frame, the hearing time frame, so I can just,
Like, I guess my question is, does it say you have to act within 60 days?
yes, so find it here. So the hearing, the planning commission shall hold at least one public hearing on any proposed change or modification to an ordinance. Notice of time and place of the hearing shall be given at least 10 days in advance at a public hearing. After the hearing, the board by resolution or ordinance shall adopt. And it takes effect 20 days. If it's adopted, it takes effect 20 days after the publication. As to the petition, within 45 days of the presentation, the commission shall hold a public hearing on the petition. So you got 45 days to hold a hearing. And then,
So to give a time frame, we would put this on the agenda for September 8th Planning Commission. We have time to do the 2-week notification. You make your recommendation. The next month, it would go to the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of the month. The second one, they would take their vote. And then if it's passed, we have to notify that Friday and the next Friday, and then the 20-day clock starts. So you're looking at November, I don't know what the dates in October are, probably the 20th of November, roughly. If it's
Thanksgiving,
approved for it to take effect.
Okay.
Black Friday.
So, but nowhere in there does it say we cannot continue a hearing in perpetuity.
you could probably make that argument.
So I guess my point is, one, we have the hurdle of having 20% landowners, which I think that's going to be tough. We've got 5% of voters, assume they're all.
We did some rough calculations, and we're gonna have to talk to the auditor, but is there 5,000 property owners in Yankton? Then the 1,400 signatures is enough.
Gotcha.
I mean,
Yeah, but
truly, if you think about that,
Yeah.
parcels in the municipality of Yankton, there's 2,500 landowners-ish. So I mean, I'm just saying, in the county, if you double that, you probably are
You
close.
could be closed, but
And if not, they can go out. and get-
assuming all 1,400 of those, or my two sons signed and they don't own property.
Correct.
So there's two signatures out there. There's lots of people who rent,
Yeah.
who
And,
signed.
and so that's what we're gonna have to see, and auditor will hopefully gobble that up this week so we can still move with this in September. You know, we talk about the time frame. We talk about the moratorium coming to an end, whatever. We can alter when the planning commission meets, as long as we are publishing it. We can get notice out sooner. I mean, there's things we can do to make it so that way we get something done before that ends and they have to add more. And also to help the public understand that we're not just gonna sit at the haunches of this, that we understand it's important to them and we're gonna act on it. So, like I said, this was something we just kind of figured out as of recently. And I mean, this is not common practice. This is not something that most counties have dealt with. And so because of it, we are working through it. And I appreciate Tyler for digging into it and getting us, so that way we know we're doing it right. And so then for you guys, this is kind of what we talked about last month. It's gonna come through us. Let's be experts. Let's be professional. Let's hear people out. Let's do our best to show the community that why we're here, why we do this, you know, so. Cool. Do we have anything else for Tyler while he's here?
Gary,
I would like to, go ahead, I didn't.
Gary, what was the exact recommendation from the commissioners at our last meeting on this? And I want to preface before you say this. First of all, I want to thank that guy right there, Ryan Heine, because he got the ball rolling, and he's got me thinking, and geez, there's a lot of stuff against this. And we're at the right position. We've stopped it. But we have to answer the other side too. We have to let developers know.
Down the hole before you answer this, and like Sam said, that I think you gotta act on this first.
Right.
And so it'd be my recommendation that we go ahead and do the public notice, be ready to have a hearing next month for you to make that recommendation. If we find out in the meantime that the votes don't work or whatever, we can always reschedule to the month after or whatever it takes.
And we can always extend the 6 months if we want.
But yeah, so that's what I was getting at. So the way he basically said it at the time, and Ryan can correct me if I'm wrong, but is he said, we're gonna plan on 6 months. If necessary, we would go another 6 months beyond that. So that was what the timeline that was set.
So Gary, since you're there, we talked the other day informally about the process. So for example, if we had on the planning commission today a draft that we had completed, not talking about this petition, but just a draft that we have worked through and we've completed it. And now it's time for us to bring that draft forward. What is the process and what is the timeline all the way through the commission's voting and approval and going into effect? What's the time?
Like Bill said, it's a good couple of months because we have. It's a good couple months because as we said, you notice, you have the planning commission meeting, they give a recommendation. Then a couple of weeks after that, you go to county commission the next month, first reading, second reading. You publish for 2 weeks again, and 20 days after that, it goes into effect.
On your recommendation, is that the actual ordinance that we want?
Yes.
That is the actual
We'll
ordinance.
never get
yeah.
that done in 2 months.
No way.
No way, absolutely no way.
No,
That's my point. That's
Just
why I
wasting our
asked.
time.
yeah,
It's we're already behind.
yeah,
And
there's no doubt that it's a process and we said that going in, and like you said, we based that first thought process on that this was going to a vote.
Right.
And now that we're hearing it this way, I feel you have to deal with this petition first and then start working on your petition.
Yeah.
That's just my.
So
my-
the cadence has changed.
Yeah.
Another challenge facing this is you're leaving.
Yeah. Well, you'll get that done besides me
No,
being
no,
here
no,
one
no,
way or
that's a
the
big
other.
Part of this whole deal.
So, but,
So another thing to keep in mind, we don't necessarily need to have a full ordinance.
correct.
We could have an ordinance designed for the smaller data centers, small to medium or whatever it is. And we could move forward with that, and the commission's moratorium on anything larger could continue to roll until we have subsequent land controls in place. So we're looking at the elephant here. We're not trying to bite a whole bunch of it off at one time. But in theory, if we wanted to, we could, as a planning commission, figure out a right-sized ordinance or an ordinance that we feel like our existing land use allows for, and zones and different things, whatever, right? And we could pick a size and we could write from there down. The moratorium stays in effect. And we still get something accomplished in that time. We don't leave things open for interpretation. We don't just sit out and somebody can look in the legal law better than I can, but under my impression, is a moratorium actually something that if somebody pressed hard enough on a county, we could stand on a leg to say legally we can do that. Some say yes, some say no. Google it in the South Dakota statute, see what you find. It's not for me to say, but I think we'd be better off having an ordinance, at least for small to medium-sized ones, or whatever size we determine, or maybe it's determined by the constituents that the ordinance truly is no to all future data center development, in which case we move forward with that. We need to do something, though. I don't think the revolving moratorium is an acceptable look for Yankton County, for our constituents, I think it doesn't cover our asses. I don't know how to say that politically.
Well, it pretty much is just like you did with solar.
Yeah,
You know, you started and you put in that, like you said, you picked a size. You said in these zones, this is going to be where it's a permitted use. Anything over that's a conditional use, and you get to hear on it, make conditions on it. It doesn't have to be the full blown Article 30 with 80 pages of how you're going to regulate every single phase of this right away. But you can still continue to build on that once you have an initial bunch of things in it.
yeah. So that is my directive to this commission, is we should be looking at what is a smart goal for us, in the timeline that we think is acceptable, and then that way we at least have something concrete that went through the process, the full-fledged process that Tyler outlined. That's what covers the county's butt, is that it went through that process. It went through public hearing. It went through so many days. That helps us. That gives us a leg to stand on. So that is what I am advocating for, is that we don't look at the whole ordinance. We look at something of the ordinance, small, medium, whatever that looks like, based on what we learn, right? We're going to continue to call upon resources that are available to us. We're going to continue to hear from stakeholders and constituents. And I hope we can make something that fits the county. And like I said, if we piecemeal it together, that's okay, but at least we're making traction.
Well, and like you mentioned before, once you decide this first petition that was offered, you can certainly have periodic meetings in between or whatever you choose to help help with that process.
That's what I would
Of
like to
getting
see
things done.
happen is I've been on this committee long enough to see how long it takes to get zoning together for a chicken coop.
Right.
And this is a much more complex procedure. We have a 6-month moratorium. I think we have a responsibility to be setting up a meeting schedule beyond and more often than our monthly schedule.
And I think
that's
Certainly do that.
Ultimately, our responsibility to the people of Yankton County to start that process going. And even if it is just a framework.
Yep.
Get something down on paper, whoever can come, and we can start discussing.
Sure.
So I think that'll be, sorry,
Yeah.
I think that will be at the end when we close out the data discussion is when we'll set future meeting schedule and cadence. And I think it'll be important that we hear out who's all come tonight. We have people from the public here. I think it'll be important that we get to that so that way we can make those decisions, but I appreciate your input on that. So
In support of Tim's and Sam's point, first of all, it would be very helpful if the Yankton County Commission would revisit this issue and put in place a moratorium in accordance with South Dakota law. South Dakota Codified Law 11-2-10, temporary zoning controls allows a 1-year moratorium, which can be extended for a 2nd year if necessary, rather than going halfway with the 6-month. Please, the commission, do the full year. If we get done sooner, fine. If we don't get done sooner, we've got a full year to do it. That's first of all.
what was the statute?
11-2-10, temporary zoning.
Oh,
It's
I see.
one paragraph. Second, since you're there, Tyler, and Gary's here, in every section of our county zoning ordinance, R1, R2, R3, ag, commercial, lakeside commercial, the following paragraph is at the end of all the potential permitted uses, conditional uses, and auxiliary uses. Prohibited uses and structures. All uses and structures which are not specifically permitted as principal, accessory, or conditional uses, or approved as such within the provisions of this section shall be prohibited. Therefore, since data centers are nowhere as an approved, conditional, or auxiliary use in any part of our ordinance, they are prohibited, period. There's been some discussion about service establishments. It would take Clarence Darrow a year to come up with a rationale for a data center to be approved under the service establishment provision in the zoning ordinance.
Do you have the definition of the service establishments?
I do.
I'd like you to just read it because we looked at that the other day, so.
All right, service establishment. Establishments primarily engaged in providing services for individuals, businesses, and government establishments and other organizations, including hotels and other lodging places, establishments providing personal business services, educational institutions, membership organizations, and other miscellaneous services. That sounds like the Rotary Club to me. It doesn't sound like a data center.
So I think what we're getting at here is the process is gonna change from what was originally communicated. And I'm gonna try not to tie up more of Tyler's time. So process has changed. It's coming through us. Great. That's what we asked for. We asked for a call of duty, like here we are, we can do this, right? In addition to, as our existing zoning ordinance is written, we do have some protection in place.
Right.
So there's that. 11-2-10, the temporary zoning controls. has a little segment in it about good faith to conduct studies within a reasonable time frame. Blah, blah, blah. It talks about that this is an emergency control for public health, safety, and general welfare. That is for the commission to make sure that they're able to fit within that box and making sure that that is acceptable. But that is another mechanism. So I think what we've learned in the last month and a half, 2 months is there's a lot of methods to get, one, to keep the county protected, the constituents protected till we're ready. There's a lot of methods for us as the planning and zoning. We have a mechanism to be that voice, to get that ordinance written. So I think that is the backstory. And again, I do have a presenter here, so I want to respect their time as well. Anyone else have any questions for Tyler while he's here? Okay.
So given Gary's recommendation that you deal with the petition ordinance first, do you want me to set a public hearing for the next planning commission? If, assuming they can get the votes counted, they've got about a little over 2 weeks to verify votes. You want me to go ahead and plan to have that on the planning commission for next month as a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
So seeing no further questions for Tyler, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
I will just add, any adoption by the Board of Commissioners is referable to vote. So if they don't like what the ordinance is passed by the commission, by the Board of Commissioners, they can refer that to the vote.
Yep. Okay. Okay, we're gonna move into our presenter, Scott Sandel from, I forget which company he's from. Didn't read the email too well, sorry, Ed.
No, yes, Scott Sandler's my name. I'm not really with the company at all.
Okay.
I'll just give you a little bit of background of myself. I've been a Yankton County taxpayer up until about 2 years ago when I sold our property just north of town here, about 3 miles in Poverty Valley. I bought it from, Denny Everson. I owned the green buildings for several years. Prior to that, I owned land just south of Martinez Church, about 40 acres there. My wife and I lived there for several years. So I'm not really representing any company, but I will go through some history of how I got into this position of knowledge that I'm at, all starting on West City Inlets Road. That's where I started. And I would lean kind of as you guys' last discussion. I'm not sure where you want to really go and what you want to learn about data centers, because most of my presentations wind up being about 2 to 3 hours long, just in the Q&A portion. So I didn't put together a lot of presentation, a lot of slides to go through with you, but happy to answer any questions that you have about any data center trends, designs, operation, construction, or what's happening. But I will start with in 2008. Go back to 2008. I left Stockman's Livestock, trying to figure out what to do next in my career, which wound up building a data center on West Illimus Road, which is now part of the Midco fleet. To get that data center built here in Yankton at that time, we started with basically a capacity study. What can the community even handle and where? So we studied all the different parcels within the community, landing on where it is, just off West Simmons Road and on the side there.
21st.
At a, yeah,
21st and West
21st.
Simmons Road for everyone in the audience.
And that facility was designed at a 1 megawatt facility, scalable up to about 5 megawatts, because that's all the energy or the power that was available at that time could handle. And so we started at 1, also due to finances. So in that effort, right, I find it really ironic now how much is happening and how much pushback and whatever it is, because to make that data center happen, I did endless presentations to many, from Lions Club to YPG to city council, commissioners, everything, just to inform them this is what we're going to build and why, right? That data center was completely an air-cooled facility, and it's a co-location facility that is designed to house backup systems or DR, disaster recovery type systems, from customers around Sioux Falls, Omaha, because that's how the network, the network fiber lines run through this community, right? So I'll kind of pause there. Any questions on that data center? That was built and how we did it. And
Has it scaled up to 5 megawatts yet?
it has not. No, but
Where is it at now?
it's still at 1 megawatt. And they're not even running at 1 megawatt of capacity.
Okay.
I'm
Would
not
the
sure.
building
exact-
be expanded to upgrade to 5?
It could be, it could be.
Would it be necessary?
If demand, yeah, if demand was there, but I don't think the land, the way it lays now, could flip the building. The way that it was designed, it would flip, but there's been other things built behind it. I think Schwann's built behind it, and there's a preferred time frame. There's a propane building behind it, so it can't flip as many times, but it could be scaled up in terms of power consumption, right? So you could scale that building, because what you find in a lot of data centers and data halls is what is the power capacity based upon the racks that are in the room. And if you're not familiar with racks are about a 6.5 foot tall thing, right? Filled with computers. All right. So how many racks at what density can be put into there? So that data center itself was designed at 5 kilowatts per rack, equaling to about 200 racks in that building. That was max capacity. What you'll find in a lot of data centers is since that time, the rack density has gotten from that 5 kW. It's not uncommon anymore for me to see some racks hitting 75 kW to 100 plus kind of kW. The industry trending in the AI racks to 1 megawatt on one rack. Okay, so what that does is the rack square footage shrinks. The building doesn't shrink, but the rack square footage or rack count shrinks with that. And that's what you see in a lot of these data centers is, hey, it's designed at 5 megawatts or 10 megawatts or 20 megawatts of power. And then the capacity within that shrinks down to how much actual compute can be delivered based upon that amount of megawatts or kilowatts. Okay.
Quick question, Scott.
Yes.
When you said 1 to 5,
Yes.
so 5 within the walls that exist there today with new computers, new technology, whatever. That's when you say 5. It's within the 4 walls that are there today, correct?
That is correct.
Got it.
Yep, yep, within the wall.
Yep.
Well, you could scale it up to 5, but it was designed to flip 4 times. So at that time, the technologies, and it was all air cooled. So we'll get into kind of some air cooled technologies, but it was all air cooled, meaning I could push air under the floor or around the room and either do like containment, basically just put in hallways, if you will, put doors on the end, and you contain either the cold aisle between the front of the racks or put the racks back to back and contain the hot air, one of the two, okay? So that would be your design within there. And that's what you start seeing is as the density went up, the least cost or least path of resistance to moving that air out or that heat out of the building was water. And that's where you start seeing as water circulates, because it's an easy transfer of heat from equipment out and get it out the door, the amount of water that gets used in data centers. Okay, so that's in a year probably 5 to 10 years ago where you're seeing the data center designs of that 5-10 years ago time frame that are high water users simply because of that heat density, and that was the easiest path of resistance to get water or to get heat out of the building. Okay, so that's one, but this particular data center here in town was designed just purely air cooled to keep at that 5 up to 25K per rack type of a design maximum capacity within it. Okay.
So Scott,
Yes.
after reviewing hundreds of pages of data center regulations and so forth from other counties, one of the difficulties they have is to describe small, medium, large, hyperscale. In other words, what metric do you use when you're trying to state how big a data center is? It sounds from what you just told us, it's the energy usage.
It's going to be in forms of power, because power translates to everything else.
Right.
How do I get rid of it? Because I'm going to take the power, I'm going to create heat by creating compute, right? To get in an AI factory, I'm going to create tokens, but in typical data center, I'm going to store things, but I'm still going to create heat. So it's how many watts do I come in? Basically, how many BTU do I got to get rid
So
of?
basically, it cannot be square footage or some other metric, because as you pointed out, these racks at one time were relatively benign, and now all of a sudden they're gigantic heat generators.
Correct. Yep, yep. And I have when I get in my presentation, I'm doing a lot of Farm Bureau presentations lately because there's just a lot of Q&A around that. The community is just asking for knowledge, but I've got a slide that basically shows a 5 kW up to a 1 megawatt rack, and you just see the heat go
Right.
up from
So-
5 to 20 to 30. So I'll give you 3 kind of areas that I base a data center scale on. One is going to be campus, right?
Is
How big
what?
is the campus? Like land
Oh, the
itself,
size.
right? So on that land, right, is if I buy 600 acres and I intend to build a 20 megawatt facility, well, if I can get more power on that land, the campus is going to grow in buildings, right? So one, I just determine it from what is total campus size, right? Second is the building itself. What is the building itself designed to be? Is it a 5 megawatt building, 10 megawatt building, 2,500, whatever? And then the data halls inside there, how big are those rooms? Because you typically divide it out, that building, by what's known as data halls or individual rooms that I'm putting power into, right? That way I build it out. So it's halls, or it's buildings, campus, and then racks. What is the density of the rack itself? Because if you have a customer who comes in and says, I want to build a data center here, and they say, I want to build a 25 megawatt data center, the first question is going to be, well, is it AI or is it traditional compute? Meaning, is it going to be a 10 to 25 air-cooled type of system where we can use some traditional type of technologies, or is it going to be that 75 to 100 kW type cabinet where it's going to require liquid cooling and more of that type modern, newer technology, if you will? Therefore, I know it's an AI factory more than
Right.
anything.
So if we're going to try to Sam's point, let's say we wanted to identify what a small to moderate sized data center is, wouldn't we have to say X amount of power consumption maximum?
So-
Anything below that level is okay, anything
Yep.
above that level is not okay?
Yep. So in this realm of going back to what I did in Yankton in 28, and then I've been out working with data centers. So now the company that I am with, we have customers in 50 states and 110 countries that we work with, and trying to figure out the operational efficiencies of their building based upon all the different data points that we can monitor, from how much is every server drawing in terms of power consumption, to the water utilization, to who has access, to the list goes on and on.
Right.
So what we did in Linux, because Nate, the city administrator, came to me and said, hey, you know a little bit about data centers. Can you help us write an ordinance? And I said, well, time out. What I'd rather do is understand what is the actual current capacity of our community. And we baselined it there. So I know for a fact in Linux that the starting capacity is 5 megawatts. That's all the community could spare on the current substation without having to have significant upgrades to the current substation in the community, and not having also any impact to the community's growth, right? We're about a 2-3% in Linux. So to naturally continue to grow that we have been for the past 20, 30 years, not impacting that or any additional commercial growth in town, 5 would be about the max power we could tolerate.
In that
So-
community, 5 megawatts.
That's it. That's it. So now Nate knows that if somebody comes potzing in and says, hey, I want to build a 250 megawatt data center, he can say, time out, go away. Ain't got it. It's not me, right? So that just gives the council the confidence to where to start.
So capacity first ordinance,
Right.
Yep,
as that is the constraint, is capacity.
yep. And it's the power capacity.
And
So
we
you look
have-
at subs.
And we do know here that utilities have been one of our constraints.
Yep.
I don't know where it is. I think there's a independent third party currently doing a study in the area, and I'm not sure if they've had any findings, but from what I understood is it's still, we have limited capacity.
Yeah, and now I'm completely transparent. I am the third party that was asked to do another study, back to the study I did in 2008. So I was asked to come back to the community and say, hey, will you reevaluate, not in Yankton, but the whole community? So we have looked at all the substations throughout all of Yankton County and have kind of a baseline indicating that 25 megawatts would be about the max. right? That you would want to even start to entertain. It'd be about 25 megawatts where you're not going to get into any significant upgrades. You're not going to get into, again, it goes back to the community and transparency to say, hey, well, if the substation needs significant upgrades, who pays for that? So where do you start with that, right? So that was one of the asks that we did study. And then you get into all the other things from water and do you have fiber in the right place? So if you find a piece of parcel of land that has power on it, do you have right fiber there? Do you have water? I know of about 18 locations that people have come to me. I don't build data centers anymore. I just help make them more efficient. But people have come to me in a lot of different throughout South Dakota, providing a place where they know they have power available next to their substation. So there's about 18. A lot of them I kind of said, no, I wouldn't build it there because there's no fiber. You know, there's one fiber line going by out in, say, western South Dakota where I ranch. There's one fiber out there that isn't going to be sufficient enough to get there, right? So yeah, capacity around what is the substation able to provide with minimal impact and minimal upgrades today. That's usually the baseline start.
When will your findings be published?
So we'll give them to Thrive. Thrive is the one that will own that
Yeah.
start, and then they'll release those out how they're, but we were asked by Thrive to just do that independent study.
Okay.
So my wife has done a bulk of that work and my son as well has done a bulk of that research, but.
Yeah, I just think the capacity first motto is helpful to our constituents by showing that 25 megawatts and bigger wouldn't even realistically look here at this time. And for us, if we're going to do a bite-sized ordinance approach, this allows us to look at what a 25 megawatt facility looks like. And we can learn about those, and we can be experts on those and figure out where we draw the line.
And I equate it. And so, like I said, I'm doing a lot of like farm conversations because again, I'm an agriculture kid, grew up and still own the ranch. And so I talk a lot about carrying capacity of property, right? So in an ag background, I know in Meade County where our ranch is, if we're going to put pairs out there, I can do about 25 to 30 acres per pair. That's the ground out there.
Right.
The water system comes from a well that's 2,500 feet in the ground and services about 10 ranches, right? But that's the max capacity because our annual rainfall is only about 13 inches. Move back to the 40 acres that I had here in Yankton County. I can do more pairs here, right? On 2 to 5 acres, essentially as a carrying capacity. As you kind of trend up from that in the agriculture industry, if I move from, let's say I put 10 head on 40 acres, right? Nobody's going to think anything of it. Probably no ordinances around that. Maybe I put 100 head on there.
Right.
Now things are going to get a little different. Now I want to put 1,000 head on there. Well, now we should take that a little bit different. 10,000 head feedlot, people think I lost my mind. So that's the kind of relation as you look at data centers. What is the scalable, and then what is it actually used for beyond that capacity? So as anybody comes and approaches and says, hey, I want to build a data center here, that's where the Q&A really sets in.
When you look at that capacity number, are you building in a safety factor to ensure that there's still room for growth for other types of industries, other residential use, other agricultural use?
Yes. Yep. That's the questions that we asked specifically. And that's why I say, because if it just take Linux again, Linux has 11 megawatt of additional capacity off the substation that exists
But you
there.
said 5.
But 5 would be the cap, because again, for the things you just mentioned is as we scale up the community or grow the community, there may be a new industry that comes in, right? That needs more power. And the community is just going to grow in demand as well. Electric cars, more, we all up to plug devices in, right? So there's all that's going to grow as well. So you have to factor that into there as well. So that's how we got to 5 in that capacity search.
So I got a question.
Yes.
We're talking about what the data centers need.
Yes.
What do we get for it?
That's a great question that's happening. So I mean, if you go back, and that's where a lot of stuff has happened in a lot of communities that over the last 20 years that it would have been run as like an unregulated industry with the enticement of, I'm going to get Google here, so I'm super excited. But the reality is Google's getting a bunch of cuts, and I'm not picking on Google. I'm just picking because they're a big company that people look at. But what you wind up having was a lot of tax incentives that were given away over those years, whether it be in sales tax or property tax or whatever.
Yeah,
it
but
was,
we don't,
ton of incentives.
you aren't hiring many people.
Right,
There's not gonna be a whole lot of sales tax.
no, so what's happened though, what you're seeing happen because of those things and the pushback of communities is those are drying up. Those wells are drying up. So there's not, data centers really don't anticipate getting those tax incentive breaks anymore. So they're willing to just kind of come in. What I'm also starting to see a little bit of a trend is community benefits agreement. Right? What would I benefit in the community? Because again, you're correct. A data center, 3 to 5 megawatt facility is, well, say 5 to 10 megawatt, maybe it's 3 to 5 employees that are actually there every day. And if it's a DR site, it might even be less because it's a lights out type operation. Again, it kind of equate it to a farm where a farm doesn't hire many people, but the auxiliary businesses that help make that farm operational, that's where you start seeing employees. So that's where the company that I'm with, I have 40 employees in South Dakota here that I have hired over the years, several here in Yankton, that we don't have an industry here, but we support the industry worldwide, the data center industry. So yes, those jobs can be anywhere. I just choose to build them here. So what do you get as a community should a data center? That's the kind of Q&A that you just got to ask that whomever it is. What you've seen in the industry for a lot is a lot of speculators show up because you look at an industry where went from $1 million to billion to $1 trillion talks. People jumped in. How do I get my billion out of this, right? And so that's where a tremendous amount of land speculators jumped in the marketplace. Right. And it clogged a whole bunch of utility companies' pipelines trying to sift through what's real, what's fake, what's not. So if a company comes and actually just says, okay, we're ready to build, that's when you're ready to sit down and say, what are you building? What is the design? Not necessarily who's the customer, but what type of customers are you serving? Then from there, you start finding out, okay, well, what will you bring to our community? And there's a whole lot of tax stuff that still has to be figured out from the studies that we've done. There's not really a good way to assess data centers properly, because again, it's like you guys' ordinance you're trying to write. There's nothing out there already to say, okay, this is a data center, so this is how it should be taxed. It doesn't exist. It's got to be created.
I will say, I looked at the property that you built in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
As of today, it has an assessed value of $622,900 on 1 acre of land inside the city of Yankton. They pay an annual tax bill of a little over $8,000 a year. And that's off of a 1 megawatt facility that I drove by most of my high school career, turned that corner every day and didn't know what it was until a few years ago. Do you see valuations for, as more get developed, do you see valuations getting higher because the value of what the business can turn? Because again, we're talking, racks used to have a lot of space and now density's increased.
So here's the mathematics behind it is a data center build out today is roughly between 10 to 12 million per megawatt. Like that data center out there was only $1 million.
12 million per megawatt.
So it's between 10 and 12 million for a traditional data center to construct the building, right? If you do an AI factory or an AI data center, it's going to be closer to that 20 to 25 million per megawatt construction. Okay, now that's prior to putting any IT gear inside of there. But the problem that I'm finding here in South Dakota is our taxes aren't up to snuff to be able to capture that. They look at that building as, oh, it's just another commercial warehouse. And so they assess it as such, right? So those laws need some refinement, in my opinion. But that's where we're at is you're going to pay the property tax to whatever the tax assessor can assess that building at based upon today's rules. But that is the construction cost of a data center today.
So just the building, not
just the building, the IT equipment that goes inside of it is 2 to 3x the cost of the data center. I was in a data center facility. I'm working on several of those on the AI side. The racks alone, just one individual rack today, full of GPU units, is running about $4.5 million for one rack.
So do we have any current legislation in South Dakota to help us face the assessment challenges?
I don't know of any today. Like, I haven't found any. I don't think we've come across any that.
Is there a state that does it well?
No,
Virginia doesn't even with Loudoun County
No.
having so many?
no.
Okay.
No, and it's all kind of a catch-up game at this point, because data centers just kind of over time, because of traditional built outs, so build here, build there. I just find net new space, I come in and build, and then push again the hype of like, hey, I'm getting this big company to move into town. Really, I'm just getting their data. And so no, nobody really kind of looked at it. It's happening though. I know like Virginia came in and said, we're going to tax data centers a 1 cent tax till we reach $600 million in our coffer, or whatever the number is. So they got 600 million. So the laws are coming. Also, the transparency is coming. Like Michigan is starting to look at a law that basically says every data center will be a mandatory power reporter, meaning I will see as a community the total consumption of your facility every year. So the laws are starting to change across the US, well, and across the world. It's not just a US thing, because I'm in data centers all over. So the laws are starting to change, because now that people see, oh, that's what that is, right? Again, 2 years ago, I could have a deep conversation and people be completely bored with me and not even care what I'm talking about and have to re-explain it the next week. Today, right, it's these kind of conversations everywhere I go. So the knowledge and the insight is really where those laws will start to change and
Yeah,
we'll start to see unfold.
Coming from states, I came from a state that was very rich in natural resources from Wyoming. And I know Wyoming historically has a state severance taxes for all mining and, you know, collecting of natural resources. And I know Wyoming was always less than Montana, so that way people would come do mining operations in Wyoming first, right? And that's how they funded their school system, which was excellently funded. Is there enough demand right now that if at the state level, South Dakota leverage something similar to a severance tax or something in terms of whatever their output is or whatever it is there still the appetite to come here if that gets put on there?
I think two positive notes that are happening. One is the incentives to go somewhere where I get the sales tax benefit.
Yeah.
That those wells are drying up, right?
Okay.
So across the globe and across the world, those wells, other than maybe like the Middle East, they're still willing to take about it. But across, Europe, Asia, in the US, in Australia, the wells are drying up. So you got to pay your way if you come to town as a data center.
Yeah.
So that's going to be one thing that will happen there. The other one is that, like I say, the community benefits that are coming. But data centers in general, and this is kind of a misnomer, because a lot of the hype of the hyperscalers, the demand is there's possibly a bubble, right, on the hyperscaler side.
Right.
But if you peel that away and forget about that even existing, there still is a 16% to 20% compound annual growth of data center demand in the traditional spaces. Those traditional spaces being healthcare, banking, finances, right? University research. There's still a demand and a need of net new data center space that's growing at that 16%.
Which those sizes would be under. So again, we talk about hyperscale based on our capacity without complete new infrastructure and all that. Hyperscale is out of the question for us. We could support, however, what you talked about, healthcare, banking.
Yeah, I think that becomes like a reasonable is, hey, if you're let's say your enterprise cars has a huge data network, you pick any industry out there and just pick on enterprise because enterprise comes to mind. But a drugstore, I was on a call with today, a large drugstore, they're looking for additional space in places where they can go that are now data center friendly communities that will even entertain a conversation. Right. So it used to be walk in, I'm going to do all this and it'd be easy to build a building. Now it's you got to walk in and find out, is the community even friendly to have a conversation? And if I expose what I'm going to do, can I proceed? So the demand is still out there. That's until we as a society, and the questions today is around, so how much are we creating this demand? And it's all consumer driven. Everything here is consumer driven until you get kind of the AI, then there's that, whatever that's becoming. But all other activities in data centers are typically consumer driven, be it from our farms to our phones to, and TikTok diets, right?
This 16 to 20% growth you're talking about in traditional spaces,
Yeah.
is that exclusive of the AI side?
That's exclusive. That's non-AI traditional growth
Okay.
is projected at that 16 to 20% mark. That would continue to grow foreseeable to around 2030, 2035 is where that Gartner report shows us, but
Can you provide that market study to, whether it's to me, Bill or Gary, and we can make sure we include it in this group's?
yeah, I have I'll send you guys a presentation that I've been given to like Farm Bro. It has a whole set of stuff. It starts off on how I put computers into racks, what those racks become, the whole density. I talk about the capacity. I talk about carrying capacity. And then I have a bunch of different kind of like that. What are some of the indicators from the growth? It's all stuff found online. I just know what I'm looking for.
No, cool.
At this
So
point.
the type of, that type of data center that we're talking that we could even potentially have, am I correct? But I don't believe that those data centers have a huge noise problem.
Yeah, it gets to how do you handle, like, what is the air cooling system outside? And it's like any kind of facility that if you're gonna take air and push it outside, and
It's
you're gonna
gonna have
put,
noise.
like, it just, I walked past the school the other day and we have an air handler outside, and if you walk by it, it's loud. So take that one and put 30 of them together, right? So that goes back to the design of how are you gonna handle that design? Because they are loud, they are loud. Again, I walked by the school one and that unit is loud by itself, right? I jokingly sent it to my kids and I said, can you imagine living by this thing? And well, we do actually.
Right.
But it is loud because it's the sheer volume. And again, I equate that similar to, like, again, going back to the cattle industry. If I take 10 head and put them on 40 acres, nobody's gonna notice. If I put 100,000 head, like the feedlots in Kansas City, you're gonna get a whole different environment, right? You're gonna get sound, lights, noise, stink is gonna come with all that. So no, it is, you have to look at the design. If it comes a 20, 30 megawatt facility, what is the design of it? And how are they handling the cooling? And how are they mitigating sound, power, lights, all the same stuff, all valid concerns.
Just for everybody's information, South Dakota Senate Bill 135 was signed in March of this year, and one of the provisions, section 5, is the state nor any political subdivision of the state may not authorize or grant any tax exemption to a data center.
Mhm.
So there won't be any tax incentives being offered. Period. The question is, how do we tax them appropriately so that they're a benefit to the community and not a.
That is a good question. That is a really good question. I think it's going to take more studies and more law changes. Like as an example, when I built this data center, when I built the data center here, in order to make it a co-location facility, I actually had to change the law to allow me to charge for power behind the meter, essentially, because there's a law in the state statutes that would not let you charge in an apartment complex for the power inside, right? I couldn't upcharge it. In the data center, I had to upcharge it, so I had to change state statute or state law to do that. So I had to wait a whole cycle legislative to make that happen. The same thing needs to happen is how do we properly assess, right? When a data center wants to come based upon its cost, whether it's at cost or at operational revenue or whatever it might be, whatever the debate is, how do we charge them, right? In terms of taxes, those entities, and then reporting on it. How do we gain those reports? So it's kind of the two part. But then also then the community, again, I go back to once an actual developer or a data center company comes, it's being transparent in the design. What does the design look like, right? And how does it mitigate all the concerns? Because they're valid concerns.
So Scott, the thing we have not spoken of yet, and almost none of the ordinances I've reviewed have discussed, is on-site electrical generation. And
Yep.
it is something that needs to be addressed in our ordinance because but there is a potential for people wanting to use fission-based nuclear power generation
Mhm.
in a data center.
Is that possible, or is that even feasible in 25 megawatts or less? Because if the answer is no, I don't want to muddy waters that don't need to be muddied.
It doesn't matter. They're generating their own power.
I would say
understand.
more at this, if you look at a 25 megawatt facility, where you want to look at it is more from like a noise angle. Because out of fun, when I owned the property in the valley here, they
Yeah.
brought when they're redoing the road, they brought the power line back up to the house, and I had them bring me a little station that could actually provide another megawatt of power to that property. And my mind was like, maybe I'll build another data center. Glad I didn't, but I thought about it. But one of the things that the power would look at is load shed. So if I have to shed off of the grid during those times, now I'm going to have to run on generators. Right.
Okay.
So now I'm going to be behind the meter, and they actually have different kind of protocols that will shed you. If you're a data center, large load operator, they can shed you off of utility. So then you're going to look at, okay, well, now if I'm running diesel generators and all of that, what is the sound barrier around those things running during those times of the day? So you put that all into equation as well. So yes, you want to look at what laws, but I think there's a whole nother set of regulations that's going to go around. Can you just pop up a nuclear plant somewhere, or even what it would look like? There's a whole nother set of things that need to be researched there. At that 25 or less, you're going to look at the load shed and what does that do to the environment.
Should we at least address that in our ordinance?
The nuclear side? Or
Yes.
I mean, yeah, but I would, again, it's Scott's opinion. But I would address it as to the state needs to figure out what the state ordinance is with the PUC around the ability to have any kind of self-generation that's not natural gas or diesel
Really?
generators, what we have today. If it's into nuclear, let PUC figure out what that's to be for the state, and then we can all look at adhering to that.
Yeah, I think that's, again, trying to keep us at a foundation. How do we protect our community, our people, our natural resources? Again, we can write something around standard electrical generation,
Mhm.
but anything beyond that, we could say this is what standard electrical generation is via means of natural gas or diesel, whatever, right? And like I said, I just think by the time you got a fission involved, I mean, we're talking, that is a much bigger scale project, and that is going to go through several other permittings, and yes, we can protect ourselves by, like I said, referring something in the ordinance. So I think that's something to think on. I think load shed is an interesting piece. I'm not sure I had that in my 15 things to consider or not, but I do think that's an important piece.
And that protects the other carriers, and that's part of the
Yeah.
agreements that you have to sign on to with the utility is, hey, we'll shed you if we need to.
Yeah.
And then therefore you're now running either gas or diesel type generators behind the meter.
You talked about the noise.
Yep.
Concerns, and that seems to be an issue that you hear in the community quite a bit is the
Absolutely.
noise aspect of it. Tied hand in hand with that is a setback. And when you look at what other communities are trying to do with their ordinances, you got a wide variety of ranges of setback, to try to, I think some of it's punitive to keep them out of the area, and some are, reasonable to noise. And in my mind, setback and noise kind of go hand in hand. In terms of what are you generating for decibels on the site, and then how far away from certain things does that need to be? Any perspective there, any guidance there on, where we can find those types of things?
The one that I'm not seeing, there's a lot of stuff around that. And because again, it goes back to what is the design and how are you cooling that? And are you doing geothermal? So there really is no on the outside loop of fans running that create most of the noise other than the generators. So a design is a very key element to that. Around the setbacks. So then, as you move that, to me, I get into more continuously monitoring, right? Because we were looking at one in Rapid City where they're looking to build a data center, and they're trying to figure out how to do the setbacks based upon where the land was, but the neighbor was a sawmill. And if they brought on another facility on that sawmill, they would actually push the noise of the property line up against the data center. Therefore, the data center would be in violation of the property line.
Right.
So lots of factors in there. I do not have like how far setback. I think it goes back to the design and then seeing what's designed, what's comparable, and how far actually is it. But yeah, there are some places like saying, let's do a 3 mile setback away from anything, and basically effectively saying no
Right.
data centers would, in that case, just don't do anything, just to go by the ordinances and deny every application that comes.
So then do you focus on decibel levels and just, you know, acceptable decibel levels and however they
Yeah.
design that data center, whether they use walls or barriers or things like that to knock the noise back a different direction, or whether they use certain types of generators to get it down, whatever that is, it's not necessarily a setback in terms of distance, it's decibel level.
Yeah, yep, I definitely go off a decibel level, just because then the data center, if I want to design a data center, I could almost bury my generators in the ground and make them almost soundless, right? And I can have my go geothermal and bury that and have it used as opposed to fans, right? So to me, yeah, decibels start to make the most sense on, hey, you can't go over this, because then the data center too, in that condition, could load shed fans, sorry, not ignoring over here.
Oh, you're good. You're all good.
Would be able to shed fans, right? The same kind of thing. They could shed IT load and fans if they wanted to stay operational in other areas, right? So they have control over that to say, okay, to stay below that threshold, just shut some of the fans off or shut some of the generators off.
So,
Yes,
we're talking about water and all that stuff. What's the waste side of data centers?
the
like-
waste side, okay.
They
Yep.
use 80% of the water, 90% of the water, or like they recycle most of it, or do some of it have to go off to the ground and soak back in? What's the waste? of
What,
it?
25 megawatts? At what point would water cooling, what point does water cooling become even a question? Is it 15? Like at 15, you're like, God, I can't do air cooled anymore. I'm gonna start evaluating. Is it 10 or does it not matter?
There again, that's why I go to the through kind of capacity components is the
Yeah.
rack design. If the rack is designed at that 50 to 100 kW size, the only option in today's technology is going to be liquid cooled. And typically that's going to be a glycol type closed loop system to it. But that loop,
Can you say that one more time?
Yep.
Rack design at what?
so rack design is going to be anywhere from 50 kilowatt per rack and
Okay.
up. That's typically to get that heat off of those servers, a liquid to chip type design, like your gaming PCs.
Yeah,
That's going to be the design there. And that's going to be like a closed loop system.
Okay.
Within the rack or the row, you're going to have a closed loop that's running the coolants through that. Now that needs to be adhered to some other building loop. And that's where that loop either is another glycol type system, or in a lot of years has been water designed. That one, the heat transfers into water faster, right? So that's the water loop that is of largest concern today, is that outside chiller plant where the water is circulated and used for periodic time. And then where does it go, right? Does it come from wells? Does it come from the district water supply? Or is it come from some other source?
So back up and say that again,
Yep.
Scott. So you've got the liquid control, you've got the liquid cooling system that goes around the chips, but then
Yep.
it goes out of the building essentially.
Yep.
And then its cooling process has now a separate water loop. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep. So think of like, I've got this loop that's cooling the
Yep.
servers themselves. Now that loop needs to cool onto another loop to carry that heat outside.
Yep.
So that becomes another loop, if you will. It's very simplifying things here,
Yep.
but that becomes another loop that goes outside.
It's like a boiler.
And that's
Same
exactly
thing.
what it
Yep.
is. This is all technology that's been
Yep.
around forever in
Yep.
a decade, right?
Yep.
It's nothing new. It's just kind of shoved and condensed into one building. That's
So is there like lagoons or like what's the wastewater side of it?
So a lot of places will run lagoons and dump that water out there. There's elements in like South Dakota, North Dakota, and further north where you get ambient temperatures where that loop goes outside and you don't need additional water. Because if it's a glycol type system, the ambient temperature outside will cool that loop. And so again, it goes back to the design of the data center, because there are some then that are using pure water to do that loop and then dumping that water out every so often. And I would call that a bad design, right? But there are definitely them that are out there that have that type of design in their existing data center. That's not a fallacy, that's the truth. And use millions of gallons of water per day. But the industry is looking at ways to design water out of the data center. How do we get rid of water again, right? Because there's a point in time in the data centers where there was no water. Then it just become the path of least resistance to get that heat outside. And so the industry, again, the conferences and stuff I go to, that is a hot topic of how do we put money into research to redesign so the heat, so water is no longer a source in the data center. So that becomes a non-topic. It's not there.
So are
but
they
that's a
hooked
research.
onto like the city storm sewers, or are they kind of separate
It,
their own?
again, it goes,
Over?
as many data centers I've been through, every data center is kind of a snowflake. Like I was in a data center in Atlanta. They have their own wells, but their wells aren't producing. So they just hooked onto the city water and they're pulling a few million gallons a day, right? That is truth. And then they're just that waste, but they run it for so long and then, yeah, they dump it back in their sewer system there, right?
Is there,
Other facilities have different methods of, but
is there a certification that says that this is a sustainable or, I mean, I'm kind of a hippie, so it is what it is. But for the longest time, I wanted to build a passive house, right? That was the dream, is to build myself a passive house and to get one certified and get a contractor certified to build me a passive house is a whole thing. I gotta go find another tree hugger to do. It's a whole thing. Is there a set of engineers or project engineers that if we see that certification, that means that design is using quote unquote, the latest and greatest technology to minimize their environmental impact?
There are attempts at it, but there's no good like industry standard.
Okay.
Again, going back to the industry has ran largely unregulated. And I'll tell you, I went to AFCOM last year. AFCOM is a large data center conference. And it looked like everybody who would ever put two garden hoses together came with a new technology for the data center industry. They were just booths and booths of people who knew no idea, but they had the latest technology they wanted to present to the industry. So no, there's no, it's what you have is, okay, I'm going to build a 25 megawatt facility or 10 megawatt, just say 10 megawatt facility. Then I'm going to go work with my local mechanical, electrical, and civil engineer to the best of their knowledge. They're going to build what they know, right? And they may call in a few experts if that's what you're going to get. And that's across the world. So there's some that have, there are some companies that have built a lot of data centers. What they keep learning as new technologies come out, again, it's like the servers and the other stuff. It's learning how to use and run that equipment as it gets evolved, right? And so you're looking at what we used to run a computer room, data computer room at like 60 degrees or sometimes even colder. We try to freeze the computers to you moving that set point up to where that set point now on some of the AI equipment is going over 100 degrees. It can operate at that 100 and some threshold, but that's modern equipment. So that's the design and the research that has to happen that just, there's been no need to, because data centers have been able to grow at will anywhere over the past few years. And that's, again, community pushback.
This probably, this
Yeah.
may sound silly, but
No.
I hear, water, electricity and noise. About the noise, I'm just gonna ask you, have you ever been out to Napa Junction?
I've been through there a few times.
Okay, have you ever heard it when the grain dryers are running?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
How does it
Absolutely.
compare?
It depends on how dense and how many data centers together. If you go to Data Center Alley in Virginia, where there's just, again, I'll use the same equation as 10,000 head feedlots or maybe 100,000 head feedlots side by side by side by side for miles, right? You're gonna get the noise of multiple of those dryers running simultaneously in that row. So that's why I go back to a campus mentality, is because if a developer wants to build a data center and they say, yep, we're going to start with a 20 megawatt facility. The first question I ask is how many on that campus? Because maybe one will work. But if your idea is to build another and another and another, so you all of a sudden are at 100 megawatts of multiple of those buildings, now you're going to start to have multiple of those dryers running together. Right. So the sound of that one dryer comparative to maybe one 10 megawatt data center would probably equal itself, because that's the same kind of technology as the air fans. It's basically fans running, large fans running. That's the same kind of thing. So you're going to get to that same kind of decibel levels between those two.
Sure, you're about 4 miles from Napa, 3 or 4.
1, 2,
You ever
3,
heard-
about.
You ever heard of dryers?
Oh, yeah,
I don't, I'm 3 miles from it.
yeah, we can, well, but I sit up on
Yeah.
a little bit of a hill and we can see it and we can hear all of our neighbors' grain bins running.
Yep.
Yeah.
once harvest comes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
I equate that when I sit in Lennox in the middle of weaning season. I can sit in here, I'll listen to all the calves out in the country like I
Yeah.
used to sit at home, right? It's, you have that condensed, at that time. But I mean, again, I would urge you, if you have a developer come and they have a facility, what type of technology you're going to be using and get the sound comparison to that based upon the decibel. But I would go back to that, saying, if you set the threshold at whatever it is, then the data center operator can shed IT load and fans if they ever get above that, right? So if they have generators running and fans running, they can offload one of the two. That's an operational type of a mode for a facility. Sorry, a lot of stuff, but there's a lot in data centers. Again, the data center I built here, then I went on to work with, like I say, just hundreds of them, not thousands around the world. And I'm on a daily call with people trying to figure it out. The thing though about the data center industry, like myself, it's filled with a whole bunch of people who haphazardly got into the industry. So I'll meet a ton of people who are working and build one data center and have never worked in other facilities. So they don't have a reference of whether this is a good operation or bad operation. They a lot of times have started as an electrical engineer, or they showed up there to do racking and stack, and all of a sudden they're running the data center. That the industry is filled with that kind of people. So going back to your question around, is there a certification or knowledge base? A lot of it's just trial and error and experience over several years.
So the data center that you helped build
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
It's almost 20 years old.
Yes.
How much longer lifespan does that have?
The technology in there was upgraded partway through. So about 10 years into it, they brought in some more cooling technology, the fans that are on the south side of the building, to help increase the capacity within that space. But still, they're not even hitting the full megawatt today. So it'll probably run another 25 years as long as the demand is there.
So when it reaches their capacity, I'm sure we haven't reached that point, but do they just tear down the building, or can they modify the building, or do they just get rid of the building and start all over?
It depends, and that's kind of where we're getting right now, is some of the buildings that are getting of that age where they're 20, 30 years old. I was in a building that has 2 data halls that are 60,000 square feet, but the data center itself only has 10 megawatt of power to it. So those 2 data center halls that are 60,000 square feet are only operating in about 10,000 square feet. Right? The rest of it is just wide open space. I mean, you can roller skate, pickleball, whatever you want to in there, right? So that's what you start seeing, is because of the rack density squeezing down, and so those buildings, they're at the point now of saying, will the utility give me more power? So if I turn this building off and bring more power from the utility, can I increase that capacity, or is this building headed towards a sunset? And if it is, then what will happen? That's actually in a cave, so it'll stay there. But that's what they're starting to look at. So a lot of facilities right now are at that point. Older facilities are at that point. Can I get more power to handle today's space? Also, what we're seeing with community pushback over the last year, if you will, to 2 years, is, again, it used to be just net new space. Okay, that building is starting to get a little obsolete. Away I go. I'm going to go find more space and build something somewhere else. That's not the case anymore. Now, today I've got to figure out, how much longer can I operate in this data center, because I can't find net new space. Also in co-location spaces, what you're seeing, again, just due to the demand, is people are lined up to buy your contract. So let's say I'm running in a data center today and my contract is going to expire in 2027. That data center co-location owner probably has 2 or 3 contracts lined up behind me. So if I say, nope, I'm not going to pay your new price, out you go, right? So a lot of that is driving reevaluation of existing spaces and how to operate within it, making that longevity of the building go longer.
So
Again,
then when that building has reached their capacity
Yep.
or whatever, can that just go to the regular landfill, or is there toxics and all that stuff?
Oh, no, there's, I mean, yeah, you're gonna have, it's gonna be like when a car goes, you're gonna have, I mean, it's a lot larger scale, right? But you're gonna have a lot of that glycol cooling. You're gonna have to, take care of the hazardous waste. More what you're probably around waste in a data center is the IT equipment.
Yeah.
Where is that stuff going, right? Is that, because if you're burning out You know, these GPUs are burning much faster. Moore's law used to say if I buy a server, I could run that server anywhere between 5 to 7, maybe 10 if I stretched it, number of years. The AI equipment has a much shorter life. So that's where we're seeing more like just true waste than it is that. And what do you do with that old system, right? And what is going to be the uses of that as we kind of prep up to, hey, how do we handle IT waste being the hardware, not necessarily the chemicals? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we were, did an ordinance that said you could put in 25 megawatts.
Yep.
That, yeah. But that's all. You can buy a quarter of land or a section of land, but you only get to put up one. And there can only be 5 of them in the county, let's say. a
Okay.
number. Would that take the market away from people that are looking to build data centers?
No, I think it'd make it fair market. Who's willing to pay for that? I think that becomes more free enterprise and who's willing to pay. If we say, again, an entrepreneur, opportunist, right? If we say we'll allow 5 at 25 megawatts and that's the cap. And what do we get as a community if we allow those 5 to come in? And what transparency do we set as a requirement for you to
But
be
it's
here?
adding on is what I'm concerned about for the public.
Adding on to,
One's okay, and then all of a sudden you see 5 more of them.
We can cap that.
yeah, but I would go by substation. So if you have 5 substation, in each of those substations could handle, because they're not all equal substations either. Maybe this one can do 25, but like in Linux, it can only do 5, right? So I would go by substations is how we research things, is what can each substation handle? And that's the upper limit, because now that allows, if we set that ordinance, it allows a utility company to say, okay, well, if you've capped at 25, we now know the maximum across our grid that we need to factor upstream, right? So it does help the utilities in a lot of ways as well. If you say 25 is it, that's it. So now they can use that
You
calc.
talk about 25. Yeah, you're talking about kind of the different substations within Yankton County.
No, I'm talking about one substation that can handle 25 approximately is what we've been told.
Since you talked about 25, you know, in our area,
Which substation is that?
Most of them can actually,
Okay.
most all of the substations here can handle approximately. There's some that are less, some a little bit more, but approximately average is about 25 per substation.
How many substations do we have?
Oh, do you remember that number? No, there's
3?
more than that. There's more than that.
Well, Yankton County. I'm talking,
Yeah.
there's 5 or 6.
Yeah, we're talking Yankton County as a whole, not just Yankton, but yes, then if you're talking just Yankton, number's correct.
How many?
Yeah, not in. So 5, right? 5 in Yankton County.
But that assumes generation can supply.
That again, you got to do the mathematics upstream because all those utilities get fed from the same kind of source, right?
Right.
There's a whole metrics beyond that. So,
Right.
but by capping it, for me, in my opinion, by capping, it also helps utilities now know this is the most that we're going to be able to calculate out of that area. So now they have that number to work from, as opposed to like, well, okay, if you're going to do 250 or whatever the number might be, it does help utilities.
So spending 15 years in a manufacturing organization that had significant growth, both organic and the acquisition. I understand it's really hard when you look at, you know, managing costs and spreading costs and for, you know, the corporate side of our organization grew rapidly and needed to. And so how did we look at that going across different organizations? And so I get a little bit concerned about this idea that a utility company can grow substantially, because if we take a couple data centers on, you add 25, 50 megawatts, that's a substantial new load in this area that wasn't there before. Because the community may be,
Now,
substantial.
yep, don't take it. I'm promoting that you go build
I'm not.
25
I'm
megawatt
not.
facilities is all, right?
Hear
Like,
me out. Here's where I'm coming from. So hypothetically, if a utility company is required to then make sure that the costs for that new load go to that new entity, that data center, and that the current customers industry, residential, so on and so forth, and get the old costs so that they're not encumbered by the new costs going on. There's a point in time where it's real difficult to separate those two because you've got more maintenance, you've got more repair, you got all those things that all of a sudden start melding together and all, and there's a risk in my mind that some of this cost can creep. And are you seeing that? Are you seeing the utilities are able to really truly separate that long term?
No, it gets blended
Right.
together.
Right.
No, you're 100% correct.
Right.
And that's, again, why I started just capacity. Like, just give me the
Mm-hmm.
basic common sense capacity that we can start from. And as long as I can start there, now I can dive deeper into those questions. Let's talk about what, if that substation can, because there are substations in South Dakota that literally have a pipe coming out where they're like, hey, I could connect your wire today and put a data center next to it, right? They're there and they're available. But that gives me it gives you a baseline to say, okay, this substation can start conversations at 25-ish, right? Now we can dive deeper into what, do we even want it, right? Now you get into the
Right.
deeper, do you even want to go that path? Or do you want to save that for maybe some other industry or whatever it might be? But again, I'm just starting off the capacity being that number.
So one of the concerns that I think Nick was getting toward is when you get to end of life and you talk about decommissioning, that concept seems to keep coming up in the community from a decommissioning standpoint, but having some regulations around decommissioning. And are we, has the industry even gotten to a point where they're doing much decommissioning yet? When you consider the technology improves, they get more out of the same space. They don't need to add. So we repurpose facility and all of a sudden facilities are going 20, 30, 40 years long before we even get there. We're not even there yet.
We're not on a building, right? And again, I'm gonna
Right.
go back to the building.
Understand, I'm
right.
not building.
The IT stuff inside of it's a
Understand,
whole
it's
different
different,
thing.
yep.
But I'm working with a company right now that have a 5 megawatt facility in Maryland. They have 2 5 megawatt that they've just outgrown, and they're in the process of shutting those down, but they'll be resold and repurposed to another data center company. So they'll get a whole new life with a different organization based upon the current design and what's there. But it won't be their data centers anymore. So you see that resell of a facility within the market as opposed to just saying, hey,
To Kelly's point early on, when we put in decommissioning costs in for wind, it basically killed wind, no matter what we wrote in the ordinance. The companies that are investing in these don't want to tie up today's dollars for tomorrow's expenses. And our community, rightfully so, don't want to own today's sweet treat as tomorrow's problem. Have you seen successful ordinances with some sort of decommissioning model, or most that are successful don't include that?
I'm going to tell you that 90% of the US is at the exact same place you guys are. What the heck are these things, and how do we even build any kind of ordinance around them? I haven't seen any like really good ordinances anywhere other than, like in California, you can't build out, you got to build up. So if you're going to build a data center there, you got to build it up, right? So there's some of that kind of stuff, but I would say a majority of the places I've been through are the exact same place you guys are. Is what are they? How do they run? What can we do? Just a basic understanding of them, of data centers. And some of them are even just at the point, why do they even exist? Kind of a standpoint.
But the facilities are largely repurposed though.
The facilities are largely repurposed. I guess for me, what I would look at is more who the entity is that's coming to build it. And are they playing in the enterprise space where it's more solid, traditional, call it blue chip kind of companies? Or are they trying to play in the AI world? Because that's a world that really isn't known yet. So will that facility be usable, right? Or is it part of what may be a bubble, right?
Okay.
So I would look at it more as who's building it, why is it being built, and factor those into an approval of any kind of a condition. Because there is an unknown there. There's whatever market you look at. I'm a huge Ed Zitron, Ed Z-I-T-R-O-N, talks a lot about, we're trying to find the true value of AI today. Where will that land? So how much infrastructure do we actually need and how fast? And there's a lot of guessing game going on there. So if you were to have a data center built here, right? Not, again, I'm no way, shape or form saying go build one, but just saying if you were, that's some of the stuff that I would look at is who's building it, what are they building it for? And is it part of that market? Or is it part of enterprise, university, healthcare market, right? Like traditional stuff.
And I from the constituents that I've talked to, and this is just a limited group and we're gonna have some talk, because there's some people who've been waiting a long time to come talk. I think a lot of people are, maybe not a lot, but the people I've talked to, you know, enterprise, you know, if Avera wanted to build something, you know, like what you built in 2008 to house some of their data and help improve their services and bring value to the community. I think a lot of the people I talk to at least see the value in that from a business standpoint, from an Avera standpoint. Avera's been a very good community partner, and same with First Dakota or Explorers Credit Union when they recently added on and they wanted to house a little more of their data. So I think, again, we're trying to just find a line. We're trying to find something that the people in opposition of it and the people for it, everyone can chew on and swallow, and we still get of having an ordinance, we still protect our resources, our constituencies. And so I think that is a valuable point to include, you know, traditional
The usage of the. facility.
enterprise, things that are a little more concrete. And, you know, community partnership. I mean, I do see an Avera, First Dakota, some of those companies, banking, financial institutions. I could see, you know, we see their benefit in the community. And so, and the size they would build is probably right size to what we have available capacity for, and, you know, maybe even a pallet for. So, cool.
Yeah, no, and that's why I bring that up, because again, for the last 20 years, I've been a taxpayer in Yankton County for over half of that, right? Didn't live very far from you guys back then. So I look at it from the community. Those are the questions I would ask if anybody came to town are you serving a profitable market space or a usable market space? We're always seeing, though, I mean, not to rule out all AI facilities, because there is an element where, you know, the large models are using the data that's there, but there's a subset of research data or banking data that they need their own facilities because they can't go to the cloud or they can't use whatever. So they need their own facilities. But again, it's a tried true business.
So you said healthcare, banking, universities, what other category?
Agriculture. Right,
Agriculture.
agriculture uses a tremendous number of data centers. If you really look behind the scenes, everything we do goes somewhere, whether it's your crop production or your whatever. It's the traditional businesses, universities, healthcare, banking, medical, all those kind of different fields, insurance companies, those
You
all.
see many government ones, like military and.
I've been in hundreds of them. Yeah. So data centers have what's that?
Are they building new ones of those?
They absolutely are. They do a lot of co-location space, but like something happened years ago where the government tried doing a DCOI, which is data center optimization initiative, where they were going to try to consolidate and put everything together. That didn't go well across the government. Nobody plays well together at that level. But the U.S. government has hundreds of data centers throughout the U.S.
So that would be
government's another.
a good.
Yeah, small government, large government. Yep, I'm doing a lot of county governments where, like county governments who would need a DR facility in another spot outside of their district, right? A lot of those become more like modular type facilities, 1 to 10 megawatt type buildings. So you're finding that, and you're also seeing more of that distributed data center environment as well, as opposed to building a great big building. Hey, where can I pop up 1 to 5 megawatts near a substation that can be my DR facility or whatever? So a distributed environment. But again, I lean pretty heavy towards the accredited businesses.
All right, in honor and respect for everyone's time, I'm gonna give the commission a few minutes of last remarks with Scott, because we have a lot of people who've sat here today and I want to make sure we hear them and give them their piece. So does anyone have any last remarks for Scott?
And I'm reachable. I'm
Yeah.
open book. So if you want to have.
I'll share your
one-on-one
contact with the
conversation,
group.
anything. And again, I wish you guys the best of luck, because I've been on the Lennox School Board for 10 years now, and writing policy and making policy and being in this kind of a position is not always fun, AKA COVID. So good luck.
Yeah, so, no,
Thank you.
we appreciate you coming down tonight and the full transparency. Really do appreciate the way you presented it. So thank you so much, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So before we close out with public comment, does our commission have any further discussion? So, couple options here. We are gonna put on for the September, whatever day the next one is, September 8th will be our, where we talk about the petition and we give it as a public hearing and we do that.
So who's gonna lead this process? You?
When you pointed at me, you had four pointing back at you, Don. I mean, I'm just saying. That is the next comment. So,
To get it done, we gotta get somebody in leadership and get started.
yeah. Man, I don't love this as much as I love motorcycles. I can tell you that.
The public hearing should be held just like a standard planning commission meeting.
Yep.
Chair, co-chair. And then after that, when you decide to get into the details, then you can choose who you want to be in charge or be the leader.
Could this group do one more discussion before the September 8th meeting?
Yeah, you can call a meeting. We just have to be able to have enough time to put it on the website and the agenda and post it. So it'd be nice to have 2 weeks to get everything organized, but
So we could run a meeting on August 1st, another
that would be county commission meeting, or no, August 1st or September 1st.
September 1st. We can't go back, unfortunately.
September 1st, yeah. September 1st is the county commission meeting.
We run one on Thursday, August 27th, and that gives you your 2 weeks, or is that kind of too close?
No, since it's just a discussion, we don't have to do the full notification in the paper, but
I just think out of respect for everyone's time, we're not gonna run these until midnight. I can tell you that if I'm the chair, we're gonna be respectful. So
may I make a suggestion? August 25th, it's a Tuesday, I believe.
I was gonna use that as to know if it's too close for you.
Oh, no, that'd be fine, because that would be normally, what used to be the drainage commission.
Yeah,
We don't do that anymore. So I just need to be able to get the agenda in a week ahead of time and get it up and get the packets posted and all that.
I would request that this group meets on August 25th. I would like to move the time up so that way we can hear more from the community. Because again, when you start at 7, we're kind of against this proverbial wall of Don's bedtime, or maybe it's mine, I don't know.
And that's fine as long as everybody on the commission is in agreement.
Yeah, so is the 6 give everyone enough time to go get a little chow after work and get here and not be cranky?
What's chow? I'm waiting after. I'm getting that after this.
Well, I gotta go eat after this as well, so, this 6 work, that gives us an extra hour to, if we have another speaker lined up, that allows that, if we have, people from the community coming here, that allows for additional time for them. I mean, I know a lot of people in this community work manufacturing shifts, which are early in the morning, so staying out late is sometimes difficult. Does that work? Are we in agreement that 6 o'clock on August 25th will work?
Yes.
Okay,
Works for me.
Me too.
well, you're retired. I really wasn't asking you. Anyway,
Yeah, right.
yeah. All right, so I move that we have just a discussion meeting on August 25th at 6 p.m. I think that'll help us.
So what is the goal of the meeting? Are we going to go over what the petition was
We-
and talk about,
I don't think we
What?
can touch the petition at that meeting, right?
well,
You can discuss anything.
you
We can
certainly
just-
can,
Action.
We just can't take action, okay.
correct, as long as we have a public hearing later,
Yeah.
and that's all assuming that the signatures are there. We could have a deal where there's not enough signatures and then it doesn't matter.
I think we go through I think the purpose for me was just to give me 2 more weeks to compile. I don't think we have a shortage of information right now. We have, I have ordinances from counties in Iowa. We have that North Dakota model for data center ordinances. We have a lot of information. I think this meeting should be us. And maybe we start with what we like about the petition and we can start having that discussion on if we feel it's a good fit or if we feel like we need to pivot and start writing an ordinance. So that way we do have a recommendation. So I think that would be the gather our resources. Let's get our heads wrapped around it. And let's have a discussion meeting on August 25th. With no action, just what we found. And as I've always done with all of these, go talk to the constituents, talk to 5 people, 10 people, whatever, that are outside of your house, your kind of group think. Hear what they have to say, because that's always valuable for us, because they may have a piece of information that we've just happened to overlook. So. Are we good with that?
Yep.
Okay, so with that being said, I will open it up to public comment. Public comment is 3 minutes. You will state your name at the beginning, and if you're a Yankton County resident, and then I will start a timer, and then you get 3 minutes to share your piece. It's an iPhone. I haven't figured out where the timer is yet. Oh, never mind.
I get to start then.
Yep, you can start. Filibuster me. I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah, Tom Curran. I'm a 25-year Yankton resident and 25 years in the power industry. So I want to share a few things with you guys and maybe emphasize one of the points that Commissioner Kneifel was trying to get at that wasn't really clear, I think. And that is when Scott very good discussion and very impressed with the commission and how you look out for the county residents. So appreciate that. But Scott was kept talking about capacity of this substation, that substation. That's not the whole story. That doesn't mean that the power's there, right? There's only so many power producers in this area that we get our power from. For example, the dam out here is one of the biggest power producers we have in this region, and they produce 100 megawatts basically right now on average, and it depends on the water. It could go up, could go down, right? And then you have a few wind powers and so forth. So there's a limited supply of power, and the power industry is a business. And there's multiple players. There's the producers, there's the marketers, there's the transmission people, and they all have their hand in it. So it's not real simple. It's complex. And so when the power demand goes up, guess what happens to the price? The price goes up. It's supply and demand. So the more demand we have out there on the grid, the higher those costs are going to be for the consumers. 10,000 or 10 megawatts serves about 7,000 residences on average. Okay. On a day like today, or when it gets hot, it's 2 or 3 times that much power needed to provide for those 7,000 residences. Okay, so that's 20, 30 megawatts. And remember that dam out there is producing 100. Well, if you're taking just to support half of Yankton city, 20, 30 megawatts, add the rest of the residences and the county, and it's going to be significant. And those costs are going to go up, and that they play that game every day, those marketers, transmission people. So just because a substation has capacity doesn't mean that's where we should land when we say, go ahead and build 5 megawatts, 5 to make 25 or a 25 here. Okay. So that's the point. Keep that in mind. Again, appreciate what you guys do. Appreciate Scott's knowledge. I may even talk to him after this. I have a few questions for him.
Thank you for attending the meeting. Usually we've like quadrupled, we've 8 times our normal attendance. So thank you, Tom.
Well, we have your back.
Yeah.
Really.
Do we have any other public comment? We got Kay coming up to party.
you kind of stole my thunder on some of this. Kay Swihart, and coming from a utility background also, I was going through some of the information and have to agree with what Thomas said. When we're looking at what we need to do, not only do you have to look at the capacity of the substations, but you also have to consider that we now have overhead lines that have to be going to all of these substations. And there are 3 within Yankton. In Minnow, it's not in Yankton County, so that excludes that one. So if we're looking for anything for Yankton County, we do need to be concerned. These lines will have to be about 33 kV lines, so they're not small lines. You have what we went out of the lake, the new, I think you can see it from your house, the new line that we have going out there. I believe that is a 33 line out there. So we're going to have a lot more of those. So that is just part of it. If it's real close into a substation, which there isn't much land available to those, you can possibly go down to around a 10 kV line on those. The dam has, I don't know if you saw in the paper, they just removed 25,000 pounds of good old invasive species. When those are shut down, it is really starting to be a problem. I got to climb into one of those units to see what it is. It's becoming more and more of a problem. So we know that we're going to be constricted on what there is for power available. The data centers, one of the huge things, and I know this is being fought in Rapid City, and this is all over. Data centers have heavy metals. With any of your circulating systems, you have heavy metals in there for the cooling systems. And the piping degradation does occur with this. And you are looking over time, you're looking at copper, zinc, lead, and chromium directly into the wastewater. The chemical corrosion inhibitors that are added to it contain polymibates. And when the blowdown water, the cooling water is released, you're releasing a lot more heavy metals back into it. You're also creating an environment for bacteria growth. And this is a real problem that is contaminating the waters that are coming out of it. So e-waste, you're looking at about a 3, from my research, you're looking at about a 3 to 5 year change out of that equipment in there. So it's not very long, and you have heavy metals in that equipment that you need to be concerned about when they change it out. So in the hardware, you get lead, cadmium, and beryllium that can leach into the groundwater if it is sent to landfills. So that is something we do not want to be happening. That is going into our water sources, into our aquifers. Right now, South Dakota has one half of the state is in drought situation. I would highly recommend that this group, whoever is going to be involved in this, that you talk to Dr. Mark Sweeney at USD. He has done very extensive research on where this drought is going. It's not turning around. It is getting worse and worse. We've had our hottest summer, hottest July on record, and this is going to only continue on. Data centers are adding to this. CO2 releases are adding to this. So we have to be concerned about what our future is looking like. I'd love to sit down with any of you, share with what I know, working with all of these things too. But anyway, thank you for your 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Kay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning and Zoning Committee, Frank Klochek, Scotland. I live 4 miles from the Yankton County line, have family live here, spend a lot of money here, do a little livestock buying and selling here and so on. I'm here today to tell you that the data seems to indicate that bigger is not better on data centers. At the meeting at the Elks, supposed to be both sides, and I know Scott Sandel, and he's a great salesman. I have tremendous respect for him, but it didn't seem until Gary Moore and Julie Elks spoke up that we got the other side. Today, Jeff Barth called me, a retired county commissioner that some of you know, tremendous man. He told me that the very large data centers take about as much water as the average golf course in South Dakota. Well, now Trump makes big deals on the golf course. I bought cattle when I was on the golf course, almost bought a tractor, depending on how much alcohol the other guy consumed. So, what's more important, a data center or a golf course? That's a little light humor there. Anyway, I expect strong opposition to the large data centers until large double-blind studies are done and more research on the heat produced. Everything the last 2 speakers says, we need to absorb that. That's the truth. We need more research. Omaha, 1 million megawatts. Wisconsin, up to 1 million megawatts. Jeff said something to me that they're obsolete before they're even made, just like our computers. When I was at SDSU, we did an animal science project. The computer was as big as this room. Now that's held in your hand. And the same thing is here. This is like the gigabytes. It's like the Bitcoin. This is exactly like the Bitcoin. The few guys, or the vaccines. 2 of them got the vaccines. The rest of them had trouble with the COVID. Chris Carr's bill, Senate 135. It does give paperwork to the PUC, but it doesn't give the PUC any power. They just report, and there's no penalties, but it's a start. Will they regulate them? If they do, they'll probably do like everything else up to 100, when it starts getting up to 100 megawatts. You know what they did with the wind towers and everything else at the farms? They build them at 99 megawatts. What do they do with the hog barns? They build them at 999 animal units. They got around the game and they got around the rules. One last thing, and no offense to anybody here, I'm going to say I told you so on the Centerra. Centerra lost 376 million on the bankruptcy, and they said nothing got lost. We lost because now Tyson owns the hogs from squeal to packing plant. The very thing we were fighting, letting the packing plants do it. And the banks of Minnesota and Wisconsin and the Bank of Canada they got their heinies hung, and those investors and those members of that co-op got hung. So somebody got hurt with that Centerra thing, and I'm going to say to those people that supported that, I told you so. And that's all I got to say. Thank you for your time and good luck with your deliberations. You have a very tough job to do, and I commend you for taking this on.
Make sure you state your name.
All right, if you don't know me, I'm Ryan Heine and I live here in Yankton. This is my expertise. It's what I've been working on for almost my entire career. This is an AI data box. What's interesting, this runs about 50 watts. Okay. This beater here, oh boy, this one's probably about a 65 watt. This guy will run its chips probably top out at 50 degrees C. This idles at 50 degrees C. It's a race car engine. It'll easily hit 100 degrees C. And it's an old one. I got the newer ones back in my office. They're way bigger, more powerful, and way hotter. So that heat is a big deal, and the power is only a fraction of it when you go from the difference of traditional to AI. So there's a big jump between your traditional data center and AI. They are 2 different beasts. Scott kind of talked around a lot about the benefits, and I just want to point out, my wife and I, we own a building, 0.75 acres in Yankton, valued at $800,000. Took us our entire lives here to build that up. We have 15 employees. That's real direct local benefit. So this AI data center doesn't have, AI data centers do not have that local benefit. We're not entirely sure. I do recommend talking to Michelle, making sure we know exactly how these things are going to be taxed, because if I recall correctly from the conversation with her, anything over 10 megawatts, PUC takes over. We don't have any control on the taxes. We don't have what we get what the PUC gives us. So that might be one of those lines you draw, is right at that 10 megawatt line. Look at that one at 10 megawatts or less, and then maybe that might be one of those lines that you draw. It's right there. So a few thoughts here, and of course, you know where to get hold of me if you have any questions, and feel free to ask me anything and I can fill you in with all my expertise.
Thank you, Ryan. Do we have any other? Oh, we got one more during the party.
Hi, Heidi Sandel, Scott's wife. I just wanted to address the mineral thing. I got that from Harry Redmond of the GIS, so I apologize if mineral is not in the, okay, I'll double check that. And also, Scott and I have really no benefit to a data center here. We have no, actually very bipartisan because we get no benefit from a data center here. So we're just educators trying to, the data center industry is so crazy with everything everything he talked about, but it's all, a matter of public opinion, and there's a lot of facts, but there's also a lot of, not facts, or what am I trying to say? But anyway, I just wanted to clear the air that we really have no benefit to a data center here, and we really could care less if there is a data center here. So that's all.
Thank you. Do you have any additional public comment? Bill, you coming up as public or you're coming up to finish her out? Okay. All right, we have a lot to digest between now and.
Okay, I want to say, I
Okay.
think part of the confusion with Menno is there are Menno addresses in Yankton County, but Menno itself is outside of Yankton County. I would have to check that, yeah.
Isn't it right off of 46?
I think it's close, very close. If
Might-
it's not, it's very close.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, we have a lot to kind of digest between now and our next meeting. We will, Bill and Gary will keep us informed as to what the auditor determines on the petition, because that'll help us kind of guide our cadence. And in 2 weeks, we will meet to just kind of go through it all, just see where we're at, top down. No actions, just truly where we at, what we think we can get accomplished before maybe the moratorium rolls off. I mean, what can we do as a group, and just have those open conversations with no action. So
And Sam, did we decide to meet at Mojo's or here?
here,
Okay.
if you want to go to Mojo's before, as long as there's not a quorum, I'll eat a pizza. So anyway, but okay. So with that being said, we just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Los.
Second, can
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. Meeting adjourned. My notes.